Hi everyone. So my name is Kyle, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm just gonna go through a quick presentation comparing Hawthorne's work to modern science. So this presentation will be comparing the birthmark and Rappaccini's daughter with gene editing ethics, which basically combines modern day science with some of the writings that Hawthorne had during the 1800s. So, first of all, what is CRISPR gene editing? So, CRISPR stands for clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats, and that's gene editing in a genetic engineering technique in molecular biology in which the genomes of living organisms may be modified. So, in a little less science terms that are easier to understand, it basically makes it easier to correct errors in DNA. And the progress in this field has been so rapid that its ethical, societal, and safety implications are constantly being debated, and that dialogue is repeatedly being discussed and reevaluated. So just to explain a modern example of CRISPR gene editing is the example of He Jiankui. And He Jiankui is a Chinese researcher who claimed that he edited the genes of 2 human embryos that had eventually been brought to term. And this caused an outcry from the scientific community, and his scientific affiliations were removed due to his disregard for ethical norms and patient safety. And just last year, in 2019, Jiankui was sentenced to 3 years in prison for conducting illegal medical practices. So this example, along with many others in the topic of CRISPR gene editing, raises a lot of ethical questions. So just a few that I'm going to share are, where do we draw the line between disease treatment and enhancement, and how do we enforce this? So one example of this is deafness. Some people believe that deafness inhibits certain prevention of a way of life and having it be altered so you can't live life to the fullest, but other people disagree with that. So where is that line potentially drawn? And will this serve as only a way for the privileged people to benefit from, or will it be universally accessible? So a problem with medicine, especially now, is that top tier medicines are very only available to privileged people, and it's harder to get access for people from a lower income. So will this gene editing technology be able to be universally accessible? And should there be an international legal consensus for gene editing so other countries aren't taking more unethical risks than some other countries in terms of gene editing? And how do we measure the success of gene editing? So weighing pros and cons, and if you can edit a certain gene for one problem, if that arises other problems that are potentially not as harmful, how do we measure this success and how effective this gene editing essentially is? So connecting that with Hawthorne's work. So first of all, we're going to talk about the birthmark and how these ethical questions are raised both in modern day CRISPR gene editing and story that is birthmark. So first of all, Aylmer's treatment is used clearly for enhancement of Georgiana's complexion, which is clearly not a non-life-threatening illness. It is even explicitly mentioned in the story that Georgiana's male admirers liked the birthmark, and it clearly did not cause her physical pain. And Aylmer even describes her face as nearly perfect in the story, so clearly this is not a life-threatening illness, and she can live her life potentially to the fullest, even with the birthmark on her face. And so next, science behind it is universally unproven. So again, with CRISPR gene editing, science is still continually being done on that. And there's nothing and no treatment that is universally proven on animals, plants, or humans, which brings us into our next point. Testing was previously done on plants in the birthmark. So it's mentioned that Aylmer cures spots from a geranium plant before he gives his concoction to Georgiana. And that can be compared to mitochondria editing today and animal genome editing, where the mitochondria editing is done in plants. And also that brings up potential legal implications. So essentially, Aylmer essentially murders his wife, and we don't get to see it in the story, but what legal implications does that have for him basically trying to edit the genes of his wife? And then moving on to Rappaccini's daughter. So essentially the story provides a mix of treatment and enhancement. So the antidote may be seen as a treatment, even though it's not really gene editing rather than just medicine. But the purple flower Beatrice works with is clearly enhancement and is not made to make her life better in any sort of way. And also, like I mentioned before, that this flower is a way that privileged people benefit rather than it being universally accessible. So Beatrice essentially has the potential to be immune from any man-made conflict, which isn't natural and does not prohibit her life from being lived normally otherwise. And similar to the birthmark, this is seemingly an isolated incident, so there hasn't been a lot of general consensus on this topic of humans being made poisonous, even though Baglioni's colleague was able to have an antidote for it. It's still not a generally accepted or researched topic. And just like the birthmark, it does have some potential legal implications. So Baglioni's colleague, his antidote eventually kills Beatrice. And obviously we don't get to see it, but there are legal implications to that. And there could potentially be legal implications to Giovanni and Beatrice harming others, because if they're poisonous, that can clearly harm people, potentially property if it's damaging plants, as we saw in the story. And so that's been comparing modern day gene editing to Hawthorne's The Birthmark and Rappaccini's daughter. Thank you.